Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Pat Wetzel for a second episode where we continue the topic of bumps in the road, title of her book. One of the bumps in the road she discussed was her divorce, where it was a traumatic separation. Be willing to do something different. We can't expect to have different results by continuing the same things we were doing. She has a very insightful look into this and a very practical approach. Marty, what are some takeaways we can learn from Pat?
I enjoy our podcast with Pat. She has spunk. Three things I took away from this podcast and it was from her book, Bumps in the Road. She asked the audience, what can you learn from your bumps in the road? What are you doing with what you've learned? What are you willing to change? And are you willing to take that risk to change your bumps?
It's a great opportunity to learn. Are you willing to take that risk? Let's listen and learn together. Pat, welcome back. Our listeners are always enjoying listening to you. You authored the book, Bump in the Road. And my guess is, Pat, you, along with all of us, have experienced bumps in the road. And we're not here to dwell on the past nor to seek sympathy, but how did you overcome whatever life bumps you've experienced? Pat, it's great to have you back with us.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I think if we take the attitude of what can I learn, that I think is the way to approach a bump in the road, because there is a lesson in every bump. And it may not be apparent at the moment, but if you stick with that sense of what can I learn, something good will come out of it.
Love your attitude, Pat. As our listeners have listened to the intro, I always end the introduction of you by saying, let's listen and learn together. Every conversation is a learning opportunity. Every event in our life is a learning opportunity. So, hey, are we open to learning? Because we're always going to fail forward.
Yeah. And why are we here? I think one of the reasons we're here is to learn, to have experiences, to gain wisdom out of them. Because if we don't gain some wisdom from our bumps, they will reappear.
Nope, you are right there, Pat. Right on. Are there some bigger bumps in your life that you can look back and say, yep, I had it, but I conquered and we're moving on?
Yeah, actually, one of my biggest emotional bumps actually was divorce. My ex showed up one night and said, I'm in love with somebody else. I never loved you. Goodbye. And it was like,
oh my goodness.
It was really difficult. And to make matters worse, I think I know what happened. I don't want to get into it. Whatever he told his parents, His parents, who I'd been very close to for 15 years, said to me, "Don't ever contact us again." And
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
"What are you talking about? What is going on here?" And that whole period of my life, I call it life wish, death wish, because not that I wanted to die, but I really just wanted to be out of the pain. My whole world was turned upside down. The rug was absolutely yanked from underneath me. All my social contacts went away. I was new to a town where I didn't really know many people, and in medical circles, I was no longer welcomed. I mean, it was just horrific. And I was dealing with some neurologic problems too. But while I was going through all this, I took a cross-country trip to visit some people and check out some new places, not having a clue where I was going. And when I was out in California, in San Francisco, this would have been back around 1989 or 90, I rented a white Mustang convertible, put the top down, went up to wine country. The wind is blowing through your hair, you have a white car. It was just really fun. And back then, wine country was not like the alcoholic adult Disneyland that it is now. It actually had some character. And by the time I got up to Calistoga, which at that point was kind of a rundown town, a lot of people didn't really know a lot about it. I was driving down the main street, and intersecting the main street in Calistoga is an airfield, intersecting it right into the main street. And I thought, oh, this is odd. So, and I was not flying at the time, never expected to fly, but they had glider rides. So I went for a ride. It didn't amaze me, particularly one way or the other. Went back east. Well, back east, I ran into an ex-World War II naval aviator who was flying gliders, and he taught me to fly. So that was the life wish part of my life at that point because I was learning to fly. I was progressing into new planes, including single seat planes. So, that's kind of an experience in and of itself. Nobody can teach you. You simply have to do it. That was just so extraordinary. I mean, flying just totally hooked me. So while my life on the ground was just abysmal, my life in the air was magical. And that's what really pulled me forward. And it was totally by chance, by being open, and by putting together some really disconnected points, if you will, in my life and having the guts to pursue them.
That is great, Pat. I want to take you back mentally to maybe the devastation of that moment that he said, and then there may have been a period of time where you felt totally, radically isolated. I don't know where to go emotionally. I'm a total wreck and so forth. But then it seems, based on your explanation, you became open. That's a very operative term, open to ideas and the solo flying, I say solo flying, the flying and unpowered soaring became an option for you, and that seemed to turn your life around. I don't want to suggest that what I just said is correct, but is there some element of truth in that?
Oh, an enormous element of truth. And most of all, it provided a thread to an unknown future. And one of the things I learned about myself and going through that was I really like a bit of adventure. I didn't really realize that. Adventure doesn't have to be flying an airplane without an engine. It can be something much more mundane, trying a different food, driving a different way, just being present and alert to what's around you. But I love adventure. I welcome new things. I don't have to like them all, but actually, I find I like a lot of them.
There may be a listener who are saying, gosh, Pat, this sounds great for you, but adventure, that's a change. I'm in a routine. I don't know that I can change or something of that nature. You may have the nature that, hey, adventure, change. Hey, I'm willing to change almost daily. But what about that person who's kind of stuck in the past? I don't like change.
I think a lot of people are comfortable in their comfort zone. I am too. One of my guests, Eric Weinmayer, tells a story, and it addresses exactly this. Eric is a famous mountain climber. He went blind at 16, so you can imagine the isolation and the pain and everything he went through. He went on to climb Everest, the seven summits, kayak down the Colorado River Rapids, and he started an organization called NoBarriersUSA.org, great organization that helps mostly disabled vets and others through disability to recognize a wider world. Anyway, Eric tells this story. He divides the world into three groups. Okay. Now the groups are fluid. We all move between all the groups and we've all been in each group. The first group are quitters. They're self-evident. The vast majority of people are campers. They want the status quo. They don't want anything to change. And in all fairness to campers, they may be so beaten up by life that they don't want to stick their head outside the foxhole anymore. Now, very few people are climbers. And climbers can be campers because it would be exhausting to be a climber 100% of the time. But the climbers are the people who are realizing a more profound and meaningful life. They're willing to take those chances and put themselves out there to learn and to experience things. And I would argue, ideally, we all want to push to be climbers because that's where we realize our best lives. There will be bumps along the way, and we'll learn from those bumps. I know the status quo is super appealing at times, but I think if you can introduce small amounts of adventure, whatever that is for you, into your life, you start to expand your comfort zone a little bit. And it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And stepping outside your comfort zone, I think, is very much the same thing.
I totally agree. I'm wondering, are you a risk taker, would you say, or not so much? And what I'm leading up to, change. Sometimes we have to accept, I'm going to use the term failings, not failure, which sometimes the term failure applies something personal. Were you the kind of person who was, or maybe you still are, willing to accept any number of failings in your adventure that, hey, it's not that and not that, but we'll keep going until we find the sweet spot, so to speak?
Yeah, I probably am. I think life, though, is also about managing risk. You don't want to do incredibly stupid things. Stupid things, yes. Incredibly stupid, no. And really, when you think about it, soaring is about risk management. Do you have the energy in the sky to make it to your next point? Because you're flying without an engine, you're soaring. So you're constantly assessing the risk vis-a-vis weather, altitude, terrain, a million different things to move forward. And I think that's actually a really good parallel for managing risk in life.
No, I think that is a good parallel. For our listeners, stay tuned with us. We are going to have a three-way. I'm trying to arrange this with another aviator. The difference is you are non-powered. The aviator I'm thinking of is powered. We look at our fuel gauge. We know how much fuel we have, and with that amount of fuel, I can go a distance, and we all work that out. For the unpowered flight, I better know where my landing strip is because if I'm too far away, I can't make up for it. So, Pat, I appreciate your soaring and what that's all about.
Well, sometimes you can't make up for it. And hopefully you do find a place to land or you land in some unusual places. There are always stories to tell there.
I hope one of your stories is not one that you had to land in some field or on a highway or something like that.
No, but one of my favorite stories actually happened to somebody else. A pilot who was incredibly arrogant and looked down his nose at absolutely everybody. And he was pushing and pushing. It was during a large competition. And he was pushing to get back to the airport without having to stop to get any more altitude. He figured he had it made. Well, he didn't have it made, and he landed in a field of manure.
Oh my gosh.
Good for him.
And nobody wanted to go get him or help him.
Oh, wow.
So
Pat,
all sorts of things happen.
I'm curious with you. Would you categorize yourself somewhat of a loner, introverted kind of person? I'm asking that for a very specific reason.
I am by nature an introvert, but I have good social skills. And on Myers-Briggs, I'm actually right between introvert and extrovert. And for me, that plays out as I really enjoy people. I enjoy being, talking in front of a crowd or something like that. But I recharge by being alone. And I'm happiest and most content with solitude.
The reason I'm asking, there's some people who have experienced some sort of life devastation and they may tend to isolate when they would prefer being out, but it's a matter, and I like to encourage our listeners to be aware of, engage with, and be the appropriate person at the right time. And that's an awful lot to be said. But if we, I feel, are appropriately aware of, and we choose to engage with other people, we can help them overcome different things. And Some people need maybe many groups of people, and there's some people who only need one person. And it is a matter, I think, Pat, and I'm being long-winded here, not intentionally, that I think it's a matter of discerning the right person and adapting to them at the right moment.
And it's hard, at least I find it hard to really connect in a heartfelt way with a lot of people. So many people are externally oriented. They're chasing what I call the bauble du jour. And I don't relate very well to that. I like deeper and more meaningful connections. So when I find that in somebody, and I find that in many of my podcast guests too, I hold on to those people. I stay in touch with them. They may not be physically here, but Zoom connects us. And I really enjoy those types of relationships. I'm pretty finicky because, quite honestly, I don't enjoy a quantity of shallow interactions. I remember I was supposed to go to a party and I did not want to go. And I called a friend of mine who's really good at kind of digging out my, real motivations. And she just kept asking me questions and asking me questions. And finally, I just blurted out, I don't want to waste my time. And it was a bit of a revelation for me in that I knew this group, I knew the people who would be there. I did not want to waste my time. I can do so many other things. And that sounds antisocial, but it's not. It's just a matter of valuing what is important in your life.
No, that's very well said. I'm a self-described incurably curious kind of person I am now. I wasn't nearly that way in the beginning of my life, but I'm very interested in different people, what they have experienced, and how did you do that? Maybe there are times I just need to throttle back and just not ask the questions and so forth, just based on my description and any listener who may be somewhat of what I just described. Do I need to adapt better to people like you? Hey, quit asking so many questions. Don't be curious around me.
No, I like curiosity. One of the things that amazes me is if I meet somebody, I'll ask them about themselves. I'm curious, tell me something. Well, I'll get them talking. They almost never ask anything about me. It's astonishing to me.
You see, Pat, now that's where I feel I'm very different. Marty is the kind of person is more on a one-on-one or one-on-small, but boy, I'm always interested in another person, what they experienced.
Well, I don't think I'm not interested. I will ask questions, but it bothers me if they don't come back to me and ask a question. And not that I want any of the attention. And if they're kind of vague, like they don't know how to answer you. So I
Don't
don't know how to keep the conversation going when it's
You feel
I'm
you
losing
feel
my
you're
words.
having to generate the words to keep the conversation going.
Right.
I think that's a really important point, actually, and it's something I've observed too. And I think people have lost the art of conversation.
Oh, right on, Pat. Right. Absolutely on.
To have a conversation, you have to be present. You have to listen. You have to be a little curious. You have to be able to hopefully pull from a reservoir of experiences or thoughts or ideas to keep moving the conversation on. And I think this world where everybody thinks a text is a conversation is just missing the point.
No, I absolutely agree with you. Let me ask you about communication in general, and I'm including whether it's email, text, letters, whatever. Are you the kind of person who, and I hate email. I refer to it as voiceless, faceless, but it is a form of communication. How are you with the different forms of communication? I'll just say very briefly, I'm one who wants to have a continuity and congruity of communication. That is, let's pick up right where we left off.
Well, let's see. I don't like texting. I just think it's awful. And awkward. My thumbs were not trained to do that. I do like email. Email is a great way to stay in touch, to just share something with people who you know and you converse with. An email can open the door to a lot of other things. I see it as a level of conversation, but it doesn't replace actual conversation. And it has to be face to face. Zoom is face to face, where you can see somebody, you can see the reactions, you can see what their facial reactions are like. I think We are losing so much by not having more face-to-face time with people and exploring topics other than, oh, I just bought a new pink dress.
And I'm totally agreeing with you. We've lost the art of communication face to face. And I just believe a large part of that is either cell phone or some phase of almost voiceless, faceless communication, text, so forth. We maybe are the generation, or at least the values, that face to face is the best way to do it. I want to see a person's facial expression.
I want to sense their emotion.
Yes.
The emotions are energy, and we're energetic creatures. And without that sharing of energy, we're not really connecting.
And we are all about connected relationships. That is a byword, a branding statement, if that would be appropriate for Marty and me. What do you think, Marty?
Texting. I think some people would rather do that than pick up the phone and call, because I like to hear, especially, if you're in another state and you're not close by, I want to hear your voice.
Yes.
Well, another observation, and Pat, I'm sure you've seen it. We've been to restaurants, various places, waiting rooms, or any place where people are. Boy, they are face down deep into their cell phones, and there is no communication going on, literally no talking with people. I thought, oh my goodness, that's just the antithesis of who I am. There was an earlier part in my very young point in life, I would have been silent, but I'm making up for lost time now.
Well, I'm honestly curious about people and their experiences. I want to hear about it. I did a side trip, which is one of my super short podcasts recently about conversation, because I agree with you. I'm finding it just missing in this world. Like people go on a trip, say they go to Africa on a safari, or whatever. They go on an amazing trip. And the way they tell you about the trip is, I went here, I bought that, the bus took us here. It's a litany of things, but there's no emotional imperative behind their story. What was it like? What did the planes feel like? What about these animals? Were you afraid? Were they beautiful? What were some of the more interesting encounters you might have had? I mean, I had an encounter with a monkey that was hilarious. People just are losing the art of conversation. They're losing the art of sharing that energy of emotion, and that is so important. And it's deep and it's rich, and it's not about anger on Twitter or anything like that. It's about real human connection. And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing so many problems in our society, is that these skills are not cultivated, and if they're not cultivated, they're not there.
Take us back to that maybe first ride in the sailplane, the unpowered vehicle. You were still in some phase of recovering from your divorce. You apparently had some kind of an attitude, boy, I don't know what this is about, but I'm this, meaning soaring, but I'm willing to try. And there's no danger in this that is too much to overcome. So, hey, let's try it. This is something new.
I was stupid and naive, but what the heck? When I invited myself out with this naval aviator and some of his friends, I flew for 3 straight days. It was a holiday weekend, and I was just totally hooked. I was just totally hooked. I was just mesmerized. It was amazing. The earth from the air is so beautiful, and to think that you can ride this invisible energy for hundreds of miles or up to over 30,000 feet, depending on locations and things like that. It's astonishing. And it's such a metaphor for life, finding invisible sources of lift to help you along.
And I'm guessing, Pat, when you're in the airplane, and I have not been in an unpowered flight, but it's quiet, you're at an altitude where you can see all around. I'm guessing there's some degree of solitude in this. You're flying solo. Is that some of what you experienced at the time?
I think flight is magic to begin with. I mean, it's just magical that we can fly. I tend to be a kind of a strategic thinker, and I'm very comfortable dealing in intangible things. And so I think that was an element of soaring that really appealed to me. I'm drifting from the question. Help me out here.
Your experience of soaring, but you're a strategic thinker. You're thinking longer term. Is You're thinking well beyond today. My guess is you're also a critical thinker in addition to being a strategic thinker.
Oh, absolutely. I think part of that is education. I think in our times, many of us were brought up to think critically. I'm not sure that people are as much anymore, but I think that it's really important to cultivate the ability to look for original information, to look for different points of view, to take the time not just to react on your phone and send off a tweet or something, but to actually pause and think a little bit.
Totally agree. And I will tell you just very briefly, strategic thinking is one of the speech topics that I like to talk to audiences about. How can we critically think? And I think of it as assessing and gathering all the facts and factors to review and then reach a very informed decision. But that's only a slight sidetrack. But I do agree with you. There are a lot of people who seem to think impulsively rather than taking a few moments to critically think. And I'll tell you just very briefly, as a fighter pilot, we travel at speed. You've got to be thinking ahead, and you only
Yes.
have a few seconds to make a very consequential decision.
No, you can't be behind the aircraft. That's another good metaphor for life, but life has gotten hard and complicated in terms of gathering information. There's so much noise and everything moves so fast. I remember when I was traveling, I house sat for some people in Seattle and they had a newspaper delivered. So I had a newspaper every day. And it really took me back to the time when you would take the time to read, you would talk to people in the course of the day, and you'd come to some sort of, there was the news at night, and then you'd come to some sort of decision or conclusion. Things move so fast now, and I think it's to our detriment. I think we need to slow down and really think things through a little bit more than we do because everything has consequences.
Totally agree. And I want to get Marty in here, but I will tell you, when you mention noise, our life is full of noise, and we need to be able to sort through what is noise and what is important to listen to and process. And we've got to sort that out as we go. But Marty, what do you think?
I was going to go back to when you first started your flying. You didn't do that alone because I think that would be fun to do, but the fear that I would have is, oh my goodness, what if something happens? So you're not alone on the first few flights, right?
Right. No, you're with an instructor until you solo.
Yeah, good, because I think it would be fun, just like you said. Oh, the quiet, the relaxed, and all that. I would have to be probably several flights with someone before I would
Oh,
really feel comfortable.
you do. You don't go and fly by yourself really quickly. You go through it. You have to master a lot of information. You have to take exams. You have to get signed off. You solo in the two-seater where you were trained. Then in my case, I progressed to a small single-seater, a 126, which is sort of a cult plane in the soaring community. Really fun. Your first little sports car, it's nimble and you're on your own. And then I bought an ASW 20, which was built for a gentleman to fly in the world. Now, that was a much more sophisticated plane, six flap settings, retractable gear. It moved really fast. That was quite a learning curve. I got into a plane, I didn't know how to fly, and I did it. It took a while before I was really competent in that aircraft.
What fun.
For fun parts weren't.
In aviation terms, it's a real achievement to go solo, to qualify. The instructor said, yep, you're qualified to do that. I'm just going to make a leadership analogy that there are appropriate times to go solo, but there are appropriate times to be with others. And many people have used the expression, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with a team. And what I'm referring to here is a team approach. And yes, there are times that, hey, I just want to be left alone to have thinking time or whatever. As we purpose, we take others along with us. And Pat, you're an inspirational kind of person to help others with the right thinking, your strategic and critical thinking. You're helping others to do just that.
Oh, I hope so. And while soaring is a very solo sport, You also meet up with other pilots in the sky. They may be circling in lift, so you find lift by watching for other planes. I remember early on, I didn't know how to fly fast yet. I was slow, and everybody was leaving me in the dust. But we were flying down the Appalachian Ridge, and it was fall. It was so beautiful, you can imagine. And I hooked up with several, maybe half a dozen other pilots in their planes, and we're just roaring down the ridge. They were roaring faster than me. They left me behind.
Hmm.
Then I had to find my way back to the airport. It was when you fly with others like that, it is a big learning experience. And that particular flight, it was more than a learning experience. It was so beautiful to see these. I'm going to send you guys some videos to see these beautifully sculpted fiberglass high performance planes just running down the ridge at high speed. It's just such a gorgeous sight.
You mentioned flying in view of others. We, fast movers, we call it, do fly in formation, whereas possible we have wings overlapped, and then maybe that close. But I'm guessing in gliders, you're not flying nearly that close.
Sometimes in thermals, you get pretty close, and it's a concern because you want to know who you're flying with. Are they a capable pilot? You really have to be on top of your plane. You have to be paying attention to the air and how it's moving. It is not uncommon at a competition to see somebody spin out of a thermal. And that's incredibly dangerous because if they spin out and they don't hit anybody, well, they're on their own. But what if they hit another plane or two on the way down? So, there's a lot to think about there. And I think that I know for me, actually, for another gentleman who helped me a lot get into my plane. He had a similar plane, different model. He had been in an accident where somebody, I think they collided with his tail of his plane, if I remember correctly. And as a result, he was just terrified of having anybody near him. And I remember flying one day, I was flying behind him. I was a little close. I just remember how nervous he was having anybody, in the sky near him. And who can blame him? I mean, he was lucky to be alive after that accident.
Oh, wow. I want to have our listeners be mentally prepared for a follow on to this, where we're going to have a three-way aviation podcast where we've got aviators. You are the soaring, gliding pilot, where we're going to have two others. We call one other fast mover for our listeners. I flew the F-4 with the Air Force. The other person I'm considering is flying currently F-16s with the Air Force Reserve.
Oh, you
We're
guys are
looking
going to leave
forward.
me in the dust.
Yes. We are looking forward to scheduling that and just talk some aviation talk. But on behalf of our listeners, Pat, thank you for your life experience help. Thank you for your book, Bump in the Road. Thank you for helping us to think forward strategically, critically, that no matter what it is we're going through, we will make it beyond where we are.
Thank you both so much. It's always so nice to connect with you.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.